So, I'm very excited to be joined on the next edition of Isolation Interviews by a fantastic guest who I'm so grateful for him for joining me. It's the fantastic Mark Chapman. Thank you for joining me.
No problem at all, Matthew. No problem.
Now, obviously, at the moment is a very weird time. We're all going through this strange lockdown, isolation sort of environment. How are you finding it? How are you coping with everything that's going on at the moment?
Um, well, I'm lucky, I suppose, in many ways, in that the majority of my job can actually continue. So I'm lucky in that sense. The wonders of modern technology means I've actually got the sort of studio setup put into my home ahead of this happening. The powers that be at the BBC were ahead of it in that sense. So when it comes to doing radio shows and podcasts, quite a lot of the well, everything has actually stayed the same. I can still do all my radio shows and all the podcasts. So I'm lucky in that sense. I'm also lucky in the fact that I've got a garden, so I have a bit of fresh air, and I've got three children, so we can at least go out in the garden, the four of us. So in the main, it has been okay. For other reasons, we're in complete lockdown. I'm not, we're relying on family members to drop off shopping and that kind of stuff. So I'm actually enjoying spending time with my kids and still doing a bit of work. So it's okay at the moment. It's okay. I'm lucky.
It's one of those weird situations where, although everyone's worried about their health and their safety, and we don't know what's coming next, but like you say, at the same time, you're still able to, kind of connect with people more, and you get, like you say, spend more time with your family, and maybe talk to people that you otherwise wouldn't get the chance to speak to as much.
Yeah, and also, it does give you it does give you a bit of time to do stuff like this, I suppose, which in a normal situation would be harder, just because of all the running around that we all do in our day-to-day lives. So, at the moment, with my health and the kids' health and stuff, we're lucky in that sense. And our families are lucky in that they're in lockdown and don't appear to have caught it. But as I say, we're fortunate at the moment. We're fortunate.
Do you think once we do come out of lockdown, whenever that is in the future, do you think it will change us as a nation? Do you think that the way we do things will be different? The way that we interact with people will be different?
Um, You'd like to think so, wouldn't you? Whether that actually happens or not, I have no idea. I don't think any of us have been through anything like this. But when big events happen, you often wonder whether that will change how people behave, or wonder whether that will change the direction the nation goes in. And you hope that for a while, and then we often fall back into our old habits and continue doing what we did before. So I sense from looking at social media and the odd chat to people that we do want things to change, and you do want to put experts at the forefront of everything. We need to rely on experts. You want the NHS properly funded and supported, as with a lot of key workers. Will we go down that path? I think, so I hate giving this answer because I hate it when people give me that answer, but it is really an only time will tell. You would hope so, but there's just that nagging doubt in the back of your mind that we end up doing what we've always done, really, and just go back to our old ways. I would hope not.
Now, obviously, you said you're still able to do your show on BBC Radio 5 live. Have you found that the style of show you've done has changed due to the fact that sporting fixtures are a rarity at the moment? There's not a great deal of, sport going on. Do you feel that has that kind of changed the way your show has run?
It's changed all of them. Yeah, I mean the Monday Night Club is still very football orientated, but we can be a bit more nostalgic with it, really, because there just aren't subjects to debate. So that's kind of quite nice with Ian Wright and Chris Sutton and Rory Smith. The biggest change, I suppose, is the Saturday show where there's no live football, so you're not doing round the grounds, you're not doing commentaries, you're not doing score updates. But we've gone the other way and have gone, right, well, let's get some big name guests on from a whole variety of sports. I think we're a month into doing it, maybe, and the variety and the names are sensational, from Ellie Simmons to Tommy Fleetwood to Tim Henman to Nick Faldo to Carl Frampton to Georgia Hall to Serena Guthrie, England's netball captain. The variety of people I'm talking to is absolutely fascinating and is a joy and seems to have gone down really well. I mean, it's my favourite show of the week by a mile, and then doing a question of sport on the radio, which we've never done before. And after we've done the first couple, you kind of think, hang on, why have we never done this before, really? So, the nature has changed, and in some ways, in a good way, really. I think without the behemoth of the Premier League overshadowing everything else that goes on, it's been quite nice, really.
And like you say, this is kind of the best time to do these sorts of shows because a lot of the guests, they're not doing anything else other than sitting around talking to other people. So, why not get in, everyone's got that spare time now. So, get those guests in.
And you're right. And the majority of them have been fantastic like that and have been very, very easy to get on. If you can, in the main, and actually this is only really with Premier League, if you can take the Premier League's media operation and press officers out of it and stop them being so worried about anything that might be said by an individual, then everything will be fine. Because, quite often with the football, you're having to sort of think of different ways to get them on because everybody in football seems so scared of anybody having an opinion. You get Chris Wilder on Saturday and he was just sensational. But in all the other sports, it's been relatively, touch wood, it's been relatively easy getting people on because, as you said, they're not doing anything else. They might be a little bit bored at home, and we can have a chat and a laugh. And it's not about the minutiae of a performance or what went wrong or a referee's decision. It's just a wider conversation about sport, the current situation, their career, and so on.
And I mean, look, I was talking the other week to Mike Bushell, and we were discussing that we do feel sorry for whoever's got to plan all these games when they're back up and running, because obviously the schedule is just going to be mad. All the sports are going to be clashing with one another. So I imagine that for you guys, when it comes to all the sport coming back, you'll be so excited because there'll be so much to talk about.
There'll be an awful lot to talk about, and it will be, and I think it will be chaotic. And I think it's interesting to talk about the planning because it's obviously going to be so much more than a date thing. Because if you listen to what people are saying and how we could get second, third, fourth waves of COVID-19 and everything, then how you test people, how you protect people. This is going to be an incredibly complicated thing for sports bodies to try and work out before they even get to crowds, whether they're allowed. I mean, they won't be allowed. I can't see how they will be allowed for a while. But then how things are broadcast, who's allowed to broadcast it, what are the rules for the people inside the stadium who are going to broadcast stuff? Do they follow the same guidelines as the players and the staff? Even behind closed doors for the majority of sports, you're talking hundreds of people to put it on. It's going to be incredibly difficult for them to work out. Incredibly difficult.
Now, for you, obviously, in this current situation, what is a typical day like for you when you're either doing your radio show? How does it work for you with everything with isolation? How are you managing?
Okay, well, so we're recording this on a Monday morning. Already, we've probably done 2 hours of homeschooling already. I've got 3 kids, all at different ages, one doing A-levels, one just starting secondary school, one in primary school. So that's, more, some are more self-sufficient than others. So there's all of that to do. On a Monday as well, I'll do the podcast for The Athletic, and then I'll do the Monday Night Club. So it's just simply a case of really being in touch with producers and production teams during the course of the day and the weekend as well to put the shows together. Then I'll record the Athletic podcast around 12:30, something like that. And then we'll do the Monday Night Club live from 7. And in between that, later this afternoon, there'll be some more homeschooling to do. And then there'll probably be a couple of other conversations about shows coming up in the week, other ideas that people might have. So I'm looking at doing something a little bit later this week, which will be a sort of Zoom event, but for Lexus, the car company, who I do some work with. So there's other calls going on about how far you look ahead to, right, what can we do? You know, even the chat to the Question of Sport producer about how far we're booking guests and how we want to team people up on that going forward. So it doesn't stop really, because you're both planning for the day and looking ahead.
I mean, the one thing, although we say, getting the guests is a lot easier, I imagine that when it comes to planning the shows and getting them ready to go, that must be more difficult because you're not able to, have the chat with someone face to face. You're having to over the phone or over, Skype and things like that. Have you found that has been a bit tricky to kind of plan things?
No, the more technical side of it is actually the first couple of, say, Monday night clubs or Toughers and Vaughan or whatever. Then we would only be on the studio setup, and then we thought this is ridiculous, and we might as well Zoom each other, so at least we can see each other, so we're not talking over each other. Because even if you're in different radio studios, you've got cameras on you, so you can very easily point or wave if someone wants to come in next.
Now, I was just going to say, where did your love of sport come from? I mean, where was it, or when was it that you realised that sport was kind of your first love?
Well, from 5, 6, probably, something like that. I'm watching it. I got taken by my dad to Manchester United for my 8th birthday, which was also the day that Brian Robson signed for Manchester United, British record, and he signed on the pitch before the match. So that was for my 8th birthday. My dad used to play rugby, so we'd go and watch Sale, who are the local rugby team. So it's always been there. It's always, there's always been a bat and ball knocking around, or all my family, my mum and dad and their families are all from Yorkshire. And back in the 70s when I was born, and indeed in the 80s when I was growing up, you had to have been born in Yorkshire to play cricket for Yorkshire. So before I was born, my mum and dad were living in Rochdale in Lancashire, and there was talk about my mum going back over the Pennines to have me born in Yorkshire, so that I was Yorkshire. Fortunately, she didn't, because I'm very proud to be Lancashirian and not from Yorkshire. So even those kind of things were always there in the family, So if the family are thinking that far ahead when you're born, then sport is always going to be part and parcel of your life.
I mean, what would you say is maybe your kind of, in your career, has been your kind of standout moment, something you were most proud of, that you were like, I'm so glad I was a part of that and I did that? What would you say would be the top one for you?
Well, because it was my ambition as a kid, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do when I was 14, 15. To present, I presented the Radio 1 breakfast show. That's all I wanted to do. So, from having a goal at the age of 14, 15 and having that come true, it's that. But then there are a lot, that's the standout. But, and I have colleagues who take the mick out of me over this, but I say it all the time. When I hear the sports report music, and it gives me goosebumps to present sports report, because I would listen to it in the car with my dad going back from a game, and I now present sports report, and I find that, slightly bizarre, in the same way that, every week I get to hear the match of the day theme and then present match of the day. It's the sort of cross between music and sport, and what it does to you and what it does to me in particular. Yeah, there are lots of things that I'm proud of, but to actually have had that ambition to want to work at Radio 1 and then be at Radio 1 for a decade is, job done.
We must obviously talk about Radio 1, because, I mean, I remember when I first really got into radio, you was around the time that you were on. I mean, I know that you obviously did the show with Comedy Dave,
Yeah,
Jackson Dave, which was
yeah,
obviously a great hit, and then working with people like Sarah Cox and Scott Mills.
yeah.
What was that like for you? Because you know they're great people to learn from, I imagine.
Well, I don't think I would have any of what I have now or the career that I've had if it hadn't been for Sarah, because Sarah was the one who wanted me in the studio with her because we bounced off each other, similar age, come from the same part of the country, similar humour. And if it hadn't been for her generosity as a broadcaster and wanting to work with me, then I wouldn't. I don't think I would have anywhere near the career that I have had. So she was amazing, and you have to. I think people can tell if you don't have a friendship with someone that you are on air with. It just stands out a mile, and therefore, you've got to be able to get on with people that you're on air with. So so fond of Sarah, and I'm so pleased of how successful she is on Radio 2, and she's funny and she's warm. And whilst we didn't necessarily socialise because we have very different sorts of lives outside of Radio 1, she was so friendly and so warm on air. Scott became a very good friend. And it's interesting that really the three people that I'm still in touch with most from Radio 1 are Sarah, Scott and Dave, the three people that I was on air with. I mean, the other one I would say is Colin as well, who I was on air sometimes, but we're on air a lot together now anyhow. But we were, give or take the odd exception, which is pointless to go into now. But in that period that we were on air, that group of us, we were very good friends, a lot of us, and I think you could tell through that period of time. In the same way that now I still listen to Radio 1, and Greg and Jordan and Clara and still Scott, who's there at the age of 63 or whatever he is, and Grimmy, you can tell they all get on, and that's the secret to it.
And obviously the other thing is Scott Mills has now kind of made his way slowly over to Five Live.
Yeah.
Were you surprised when you found out about that? Because he didn't seem like the kind of natural fit, in my opinion, for Five Live, but he's worked so well over
Yeah, no, but it's quite, because Chris is obviously very sporty and knows his stuff. So there's a good balance between the two of them, really. And he's a good broadcaster, and he's a brilliant broadcaster. Not just a good broadcaster, he's a brilliant broadcaster, and knows radio inside out because he's been doing it for 30 years, and therefore. No, it's not. I mean, is it a surprise that it's come over to Five Live? I suppose when you hear it to start with, you think, okay, but it's a Saturday morning entertainment show. So, and good broadcasters can normally turn their hands to a whole variety of things, or they should be able to anyhow.
What would you say from your time at Radio 1? What would you say was the sort of the main thing maybe that you learnt that you've brought forward to your work now?
Not to overthink things, maybe not to overwrite things. The beauty of always having a record to play is if the conversation dries up, you just hit the record. But you don't over rehearse a link. You don't go and then you say this and then I'll say that and then you say this. You try and make it as natural as possible. So I think that's one of the things that I certainly learned as a broadcaster, and also from doing Newsbeat and having to do a sports bulletin in a minute, it teaches you not to waffle on. Really, you've got to be tight with your words, not waste them, and get the message across. And so they're the two things really. It teaches you to be natural and not to waffle.
Now, when you were growing up, who would you say were your kind of inspirations, your idols? Who did you look up to when it came to
Simon Mayo was my all-time hero, and still is. So that was weird when I joined Radio 1 and he was still there. And then weird when I'm on Five Live and he's there. And weird when I get a message from him every now and then, because that's And I know they say never meet your heroes, but I'm glad I did because he is a very nice man. But then here in Manchester, in our local radio station, Piccadilly, there were a lot of good broadcasters who came through Piccadilly Radio. Steve Penk, when Steve Penk was on Breakfast in Manchester before he went to Capital, was massive, and was hugely popular amongst all of us, actually, who listened to the radio on the way to school. And in the afternoons, they had Pete Mitchell, who sadly died, about a month ago. 3 weeks, a month ago. but they were sort of totemic Mancunian broadcasters, really. But it was always through, all my broadcasters were really through the radio. And then I suppose and this is a little bit later on, but I suppose as a sports presenter, then Des Lynam was the head and shoulders above everybody else, really, and still is, actually, in my opinion. But there we.
Would you say you've ever had a sort of a moment in your career where you've either been starstruck or you've just kind of sort of frozen a bit and not known what to say because you've been so in awe, maybe meeting a hero or someone that you just really look up to?
No, I don't. I don't think so, really. I mean, Radio One is a very it's quite a good grounding for not being starstruck, really, because already when you arrive, there are quite big names working there anyhow, and then you meet so many big names over the course of 10 years of being there. It doesn't matter. You could give me any big artist from 99 to 2009, and I will have met them. And there are moments when you think, my God, this is really surreal. So I can remember being at Euro 2004 and lying on a sun lounger for about an hour in Portugal talking football with Noel Gallagher, and just thinking, now this is slightly weird. But then it was just like how any two people would have a chat about football, really. So. The Radio 1 environment actually normalises a lot of things, because when a big name comes in, you're invariably in the studio or already on air. So they get brought in and introduced to you, and then away you go. And so then it's just like having a normal conversation. So it doesn't matter whether, well, I mean, it's impossible not to name drop when you give an answer like this, but it doesn't matter whether it's Kylie or Beyonce or Dave Grohl or whoever it is. It's still just a person and still just having a conversation.
Now, I was going to ask, and I kind of think I already know the answer to this, but would you say what you're doing now is your dream job, or have you got a dream job that you would love to do going forward?
I don't know if I've got a dream job going forward. This job is amazing, and I love it, and long may it continue, really, as long as I get to keep the variety that I've got. I'm lucky. I work in a lot of sports across both radio and television, and I find that really fascinating and interesting. I'm doing a master's at the moment in sporting directorship, and whether that will take me in a different direction, I have no idea. I suppose it all depends whether I get it or not in 6 months' time or 8 months' time. But I don't look too far into the future, because I think it can stop you enjoying what you're doing at the moment. So this job is good at the moment. What comes in the future, who knows?
No, I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, because I can talk for hours to you. But just before we go, is there anything you'd like to say to anyone watching this or listening on Hospital Radio? Any messages you'd like to give them?
Well, I'm not on Facebook, so how people watch this, I have no idea. But for people listening on Hospital Radio, that was the first job I ever had on radio, or first time I ever appeared on radio, was doing a request show on Hospital Radio. So I have a very soft spot for people who do Hospital Radio, because it's a very good grounding, and it's a good start. And I always used to feel incredibly worried about going round, not that you can do this at the moment in this situation, but I always used to feel very worried about going around the wards asking patients if they had requests to then go back and play on the radio. So to anybody in hospital who does get asked by Hospital Radio people if they have a request, then thank you for your patience. It's much appreciated, and get well soon. And to everybody on Hospital Radio, keep up the good work, and hopefully it'll progress into more for you.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Do keep safe. And yeah, thank you for your time.
My pleasure, Matthew. My pleasure.